The Peace Somebody Podcast, episode 21. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So you hold 3 degrees from Cambridge in physics and the philosophy of science. Tell me a little bit about your background growing up. Where'd you grow up? Tell people about yourself.
All right, fair enough. South coast of England, county called Dorset. Born and bred British. Left in my early 20s. Thought I was going to live in Asia for a while, and then it's a long story. But then 6 attorneys told me there was no way I could possibly immigrate to America on the terms that I insisted on immigrating on. So I thought I'm going to do that instead.
All right.
There was also a woman involved, but as I say, a long story. Came to the States. I think end of 2004 was when I started to try and actually immigrate here on a permanent basis, and became a citizen a couple of years ago after a brutal 12-year engagement with the great almighty Kafkaesque American immigration system. And, and all's well that ends well. So that's my shtick.
How did you get into physics? I don't know if you're familiar with David Friedman. He's the son of Milton Friedman. He grew up a physicist, and the reason he said he chose that is because he did not want to walk in the path of his father and just be, that's all he wanted to do. But he ended up becoming an economist anyway. So how did you get into physics, and how'd that lead you to libertarianism, if there was a correlation at all?
Yeah, no, wow. Like that's a great question, and we could do a whole show on this.
There we go.
And I don't often get asked it, but my becoming a physicist was in some ways one of the most important decisions I've ever made. And when I say becoming a physicist, I never wanted to actually be a physicist as in a career. I wanted to go to university and study physics seriously, to a high level. And it doesn't get a lot more serious than physics at University of Cambridge, So I did it hardcore. The reason was I was religious as a teenager. And I read, when I was 14 or 15 years old, 14, I think, I read A Brief History of Time. This is timely because, of course, Stephen Hawking, who wrote that book, has just died. And I remember the moment when I was reading that book and basically discovered quantum mechanics and realized that I had been making pronouncements about God, life, the universe, and everything. And I was wrong about the reality of the table at which I sat. And I had, if I could call it like a reverse road to Damascus experience of intellectual humility. And I figured I can't have any serious opinions about theology, philosophy, or morality if I don't even understand what a table is. And it was clear to me that I didn't understand what a table was.
Well, so now that Stephen Hawking's died, what do you think, in your opinion, his legacy's been? Because obviously you have a lot of different sides here. You have some people saying that he kind of skewed science to the left, and So what do you think about all that?
No, I don't. No. Look, I find myself disagreeing with Hawking on his political pronouncements, but that's not what he spends his time thinking and reading about. Hawking is certainly left of me from what I've seen. Obviously, but that's not why he's important. And I don't think it's an interesting question. Politics doesn't skew. Sorry, physics at that level isn't political. Everything's a bit political. There are people in it, and people have political views. But what's being done in research into black holes and quantum mechanics and string theory and all of this stuff, it's quite immune to whether you're a socialist, a communist, a fascist, a libertarian, or anything, a conservative.
Yeah, fair enough. I actually just saw the movie. I don't know if you've seen it. It's called The Theory of Everything, I believe. And it picks Stephen Hawking from when he was a child up. And, I could say I have more respect for him after that. But it seemed his ultimate goal for his life was to try to find that one equation that tied the whole universe together. And honestly,
that's the telos of physics. The telos of physics is the unified theory. Yeah.
Because maybe you can answer this for me, because I've always been trying to figure this out. And I took a physics class, and it was just an intro to physics. It was hard for me. I was good at chemistry, not good at physics. I took physics, and my teacher was great. Loved my teacher. I got like a B in the class, but he talked about the main problem of physics is when you talk about black holes, things supposedly get sucked into a black hole at an infinite rate. And it's like, what does it mean to accelerate into infinity? So there seems to be like that gap. And obviously there's like people that don't believe in infinity. There's that whole debate.
What does that mean? Don't believe in infinity. I didn't
know.
What that means. I just count to keep counting and let me know when you stop. Until that time, I'll be believing in infinity. Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. All right, we could probably have a whole discussion about that.
This is great stuff. Actually, I'm loving it already.
Oh, that's great. You termed the Blue Republicans, which was liberals and Democrats that moved toward Ron Paul. Was Ron Paul your intro to libertarianism, or were you in it before that?
Do you know, actually? So my engagement with Ron Paul was my first real political activism. It's what kind of put me on the map as in politics in America. So he was kind of, if you like, the first thing I did or followed after I decided, actually, maybe I'm a bit interested in politics after all, which I haven't been for nearly all of my life, right? I kind of discovered liberty and the liberty canon in about 2010. But the thing that got me into it was entirely by accident. I think it was a video by Peter Schiff. It was one of those Peter Schiff was right videos, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And actually this relates to your earlier question, so this is kind of interesting. As a physicist, before I was a physicist, but also as a physicist, I was always interested in those kind of big ideas that gave you an understanding of a lot of stuff, because that's what science does, right? It's looking for single principles that are explaining multitudes of things. And this is why economics is called the dismal science, because there seems to be no single principles that you can hang your hat on that consistently works and enables you to make predictions. So I had no interest in economics and politics. Well, go ahead.
One thing Rothbard would argue is honestly the same thing, is that you can't confuse economics with physics. You can't try to, there are no real constants with humans. It's really, really hard to place them in equations. Like take GDP, for example. I was just talking about this with other economic nerds the other day. GDP assumes that net exports are a good thing. That's part of the equation. And you can just imagine all the other parts of the equation assume things. So that seems problematic. I think humans are a little bit too complicated to put into equations. And honestly, I can imagine.
I absolutely agree. A lot of my work is kind of about the epistemic humility we need to have, which sits on that fact in many respects, right? People mistake precision, which you get by putting people into equations, and apparent consistency for accuracy of the beliefs that they derive. And I wrote a big kind of almost thesis on why that's wrong.
Well, what was that? What is that? What is that titled? And we'll link to that.
It's called Purism Isn't Principled in an Impure World. And it's perhaps the most it's the heaviest thing I've ever written on phi, actually.
All right.
Yeah. But again, it's pretty technical.
All right, fair enough. I mean, I guess another good question is, how did you get involved with phi? Because I really love phi. I mean, I have 100 copies of iPencil, 100 copies of the law, 100 copies of economics in one lesson, and I got them all from phi for $1 each plus shipping. So I urge everyone, go to phi.org and check out these cheap books you have, because I go to a college campus with 42,000 people, and I'm trying to convert leftists. That's part of what I do in my podcast. So yeah, so how'd you get involved with phi?
Okay, so yeah, good. Thanks for the thumbs up for phi. So I'm not a staff member at phi. I'm what they call a member of their faculty network, which basically means I'm invited to kind of write and put my thoughts out, and they give me a platform. Like for example, at PhiCon this year, as last year, they have me speak and present. So I'm very grateful to phi. I love the platform, and I love their audiences. Right? I mean, they're engaged. There are a wide range of obviously liberty bending people, if I can put it that way. But they're not dogmatic. They've got a very human and humane spirit. I think that the phi thing happened about 1.5 years ago, and I think Jeffrey Tucker was instrumental in it. I had been increasingly doing little, mostly informal kind of one-on-ones with Jeffrey in certain events. I often get asked, not often, but I've occasionally got asked to do anarchy discussions with him. And there's a few of those online.
That was the first thing I saw by you was your Adam Kokesh and your debate with Adam Kokesh. I'll be honest, I don't know if you can tell. I consider myself an anarcho-capitalist, meaning I don't believe in this. I don't believe the state can exist morally on principle. But we don't have to debate that. But that's my views. But yeah, I saw that debate, and I think you're a really, really respectful and nice guy. You're hard not to like. So I think I think even in that debate, you made a lot of good points. And you made one point in the debate. Maybe we can just talk about real quick. And you said this. How can you necessarily claim a voluntary society would function a certain way? For example, free trade and harmony would occur when libertarians admit they don't have enough knowledge to rule other people's lives. That doesn't seem like a decent point. I got to ask, I don't know if that debate was a few years ago. And another question I'll add on later is, how do you think you've come closer to the Austrian side, or like you said before, you just have no interest in economics, or how have you evolved?
Oh, please don't understand. No. Well, I never finished that point. Let's go back to that.
Go ahead. Yeah,
no, absolutely. The Peter Schiff video, right? How I got into this. So the reason he brought me to libertarianism was because he brought me to Austrian Economics. And
okay. Great.
Yeah, and the way he did it was, here was a guy who had expounded some basic principles, made testable predictions. The predictions were tested and found to be accurate. I'm, obviously talking about the crash, not only that it would happen, but kind of why it would happen. And I had never seen an economist do that. So, and in the course of this video, or this compilation, whatever it was. I mean, it was a long time ago now. I don't quite remember. But in the course of it, he mentions Austrian Economics. And I had never heard of it. And so I kind of looked it up, Google Austrian Economics, what the hell is this? And I got really interested in it. And before I actually pursued the politics, libertarianism, I pursued Austrian Economics. And I got in touch with a good friend of mine, a guy called Glenn, who runs a libertarian / Austrian Economics nonprofit, right? And he goes into the developing world and teaches the principles of liberty, free societies, not in the Soros sense, and Austrian Economics and libertarianism.
I love that.
It's an awesome organization, and I had never paid any attention to it, but then I discovered this Austrian Economics from Peter Schiff. And so I wrote to my buddy Glenn. I said, Glenn, okay, I'm now interested in this libertarianism thing that you're selling all over the world. Send me a reading list. And he actually you mentioned a few books already. One of them, Economics in One Lesson, and one of them, The Law. And those were two of the very first books that brought me over. So what I did first was I studied Austrian Economics before I actually kind of got into the liberty canon. And that's why my book, If You Can Keep It, Why We Nearly Lost It and How We Get It Back, one of the longest chapters is actually on economics, and very much on, this concern of Rothbard, not entirely on this, but that, you can't put people in equations. And actually, in that regard, I talk a lot about Peter Schiff's predictions, on the one hand, but also Steve Keen, who's not a libertarian economist, but I think one of the most important economists of our time. And he's done amazing work proving that fact. Proving analytically as well as empirically. So he's a very important economist that libertarians, I think, need to pay more attention to, especially given that he doesn't self-identify as a libertarian. So libertarians aren't naturally paying attention to him. But anyway, that was how I got into it. And so there's a lot of Austrian economics in my book, and I got this chapter that I'm quite proud of in my book, where I do this kind of counterpoint between Austrian economics and modern monetary theory. But that's a whole discussion on its own.
I guess I want to jump right into your book. So let's see. Now, what was your book title one more time? I haven't written down my paper. I just have so many scribbles on here.
If You Can Keep It, Why We Nearly Lost It and How We Get It Back.
There it is.
There's two books by the same title. Mine's the one by Robin Koerner.
Gotcha. Let me just restate that title because I found it on my paper now. The book is titled If You Can Keep It, Why We Nearly Lost It and How We Can Get It Back. And you published this back in 2016. Now your angle on the book is very interesting. You argue that people generally aren't open to new views right away. So like, for example, if I go out in public and I talk about anarcho-capitalism, no one's even going to hear me. Like they're just going to be like, that idea doesn't even exist in my mind. But you use this one phrase and I love it. It's people don't want to see what's so. Can you talk about that?
There's a big gap between what we know and what is actually so, right? And there's that quote, it ain't what you don't know that will kill you, it's what you know that just ain't so. There's a lot to this. I mean, and in the book, I go into the psychology of it and even some of the neurology of it. All reasoning is motivated. When it comes to politics, anything morally laden, that's particularly the case. But it's necessarily the case. Goethe said, we see only what we know, which is kind of counterintuitive, right? We think we collect sense data, and then based on that, we form knowledge. Well, obviously, we do that a bit, but overwhelmingly, we do more of the other way around, which is there's so much data at any given time, there's an infinity of data. If you just look at the world right in front of you, there's an infinity of things that you could process about it, right? So we can't do that. And what we do process is largely the filtering is largely a function of what we already know stroke believe. And so when it comes to politics, that is hugely important, right? If you deal with the art of political persuasion, which is what I kind of claim to have an expertise in, you have to understand that it isn't that you don't get to pick your own facts. Actually, we're always picking our own facts. And so a little bit more of a sensitivity to that. And an understanding of why we need to do that, just to be able to have a working brain in a human being that can engage effectively with and not be overwhelmed by a saturation of data is really important.
And you mentioned a paper, it was titled Perceptions of Incongruity, and that was published in December 1949. And this is they were flashing playing cards to subjects, and every once in a while they would flash like a 7 of hearts, but it would be a black, and a 7 of clubs, and it would be a red. And obviously the heart's supposed to be red. And they would slow it down little by little till eventually someone realized, like, like that's a 7 of hearts, that's black, that's wrong. And I guess kind of what you're talking about is people sometimes see the big picture, like you're just looking for that quick number, but looking at like little micro details, that actually takes a lot of focus. And one of my personal theories, Robin, is that libertarianism is attracted to intellectuals because we're the people that'll sit down and like talk for 6 hours just about random stuff. And versus just whether you're a Republican or Democrat, you're often holding on to a talking point. I mean, to take this for example, taxes are the prices we pay for civilized society. I drive on roads, I go to the post office. Whether you believe that or not, it's just kind of a creepy talking point. It's kind of word for word. And libertarians, I think, overall tend to dive more into the issues. What do you think about that?
So first of all, I think taxation is theft is every bit as bad as the one that you've just said. And there's actually data on that. But I take your general point. I'm just saying we have to take the logs out of our own eyes as libertarians. It's why we're still, everyone says, well, everyone's a libertarian. If they actually understood their own views, and then here we are getting 3% with Gary Johnson, the LP, and still banging on and getting nowhere. There's something for us to learn.
Look, my point of view is, and tell me if you agree with this. You would consider yourself a minarchist, meaning you believe the government's good for 3 things: enforcing domestic.
No, sorry, I said no right there, because my minarchism, as per that debate, which you kindly mentioned at the beginning of the show, it's not because I have a committed belief that government is the answer on whatever size list I have. That's not why I'm a minarchist. My minarchism, again, it has the same root as my libertarianism, in that I simply don't know enough. I just don't know enough.
Well, let me rephrase my question this way, because the way a lot of minarchists, they are the people that would just say, I just believe the government should do 3 things, mainly outlined in the Constitution: protect us from domestic disputes, protect us from foreign disputes, and enforce contracts. My point of view is regarding minarchists. I don't hate them. I would just argue till we get down till we get down to those few functions of government, till we actually rewind this all the way back to 3. Can't we save the argument for later? I don't understand why anarchists and minarchists would argue to that extent. Okay. If that makes sense.
So no. So you've actually expounded my position, like precisely. That's my position. the reason here we are talking about my being a minarchist is because I keep getting asked to do debates where I take that side, not because I self-identify that way. To me, anarcho-capitalism or anarchism involves a statement of faith that I just don't think is necessary, because we can all agree that we need less government, we need less state-backed violence, that government is a monopoly of force. I mean, I think the question that libertarians need to engage with respect to that is, yeah, it's a monopoly of force, but there's, in society after society, there is most people believe, consciously or subconsciously, that there is a legitimization of the force that comes with having a certain agreed upon process, to the use of that monopolized force. But that's another discussion.
Rothbard people think Rothbard would say, hey, just get rid of the government all today. No, what Rothbard would argue is that there's nothing wrong with pragmatism. There's nothing wrong with taking a tax cut, but it's kind of like, what is your ultimate goal? Is your ultimate, I use rape as an example just because it's extreme. If you're a person that says you're against rape, are you against all rape or 90% of rape? So it's kind of like, what is your long-term goal? I think the long-term goal will be a 0% income tax, but I have no problem going way down from there.
I don't think it's exactly. We're all on the same page. The problem is that if you argue about that, see, the problem is with your analogy, I just wouldn't accept it, because there's a legitimate counter argument that it's not about, are you against all of 100% of rape or 90% of rape? It's about, and that, by the analogy, is it actually all rape that we want to get rid of? In other words, is there not some consent in this situation, but in that situation, in society after society, through our actions, and in some cases through our, constitutional documents, whatever, people, do feel that if they have some say in the direction of the force, that it is not the same as pure violence.
Well, I don't think you can conflate like BDSM to rape. And by the way, I live in Denver, Colorado. It's a pretty progressive city. I have had people ask me to come to these weird BDSM sex parties, and I don't know why I'm saying this, but they're always in the woods for some reason. They're always in the woods. And
I'm gonna say, this is the most interesting libertarian podcast I've ever done. So I'm already.
Oh, great!
This is great because we've done physics. We're doing BDSM. This is awesome. I'm coming back.
I'm just telling you what I experienced. So I don't think you're trying to conflate BDSM with rape, but I think BDSM is consensual. I think the people that go to these forest parties with these machines, because apparently there's machines. I don't know. I think they consent to that, but I don't think anyone would. I think rape by definition would mean non-consensual.
Right. But what I'm saying is your analogy doesn't work, because I don't think, like, the anarchist view is there is no consent in, so taxation is theft, right? So in other words, that consent is a black or white thing. And I'm saying that I think, human nature, if we had longer, I would talk about experiments that show this down at the neurological level. People do not, people's consent simply is not a yes/no. It's not a 1-0. There are degrees of it. And, let's put it this way. Maybe there aren't, but it's a really good discussion to have, that I find that anarcho-capitalists, they kind of do what you just did, right? I'm just like, well, look, I think for the record, you have a very reasonable viewpoint. I'm not sitting here raging. I think your arguments are very reasonable. But it's been so great talking to you. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, this is a lot of fun. Hopefully it won't be the last time we talk, actually. I kind of want to keep it short just so we can just do this another time. But I'm going to link to robinkoerner.com. That's KOERNER.com. And I'm going to link to your book. Is it still on Amazon there?
It is, but you know what? If people go to robinkoerner.com, there is a link to the book. And if anybody wants to pick it up, actually, it's good to go there because you can read Jeffrey Tucker's foreword on the book, right?
Oh, great.
And if you buy it there, if anybody's interested to do that, it will be a signed copy. I will send it personally.
All right. Well, we've covered it all here today with Robin Koerner. It's been a pleasure talking to you. You're a really great guy to talk to, and we'll see you next time.
It's been a pleasure to talk to you too, and I feel like we've just scratched the surface. And I know all the anarcho-capitalists are out there going to go, no, he's so wrong, And I feel like I've got to come back to explain myself.
Yeah, you got it, man. All right, I'll see you next time. Thank you so much, man.
Awesome. Thanks for your time.
All right, see you. Hey everyone, please like, follow, donate, subscribe, and share. Any donations will be used to reach more people.